2,000 contestants might sound exaggerated, but they were swarming all over the ground, waiting in front of a half-kilometer-long gate that was gradually opening. Then, out of a crack in the air, a gaping mouth with teeth suddenly appeared, though the jaws seemed a bit stiff. Even so, that quick glimpse was enough to stir up a ruckus. The space had ruptured, and something had come out. Moments later, Yuziu emerged fully outside in his beast form. Normally, when talking with super beings, he'd take on a plant person shape. So, changing into a beast this time suggested that super beings weren't the majority yet. As soon as the representative of the three-eyed clan laid eyes on that beast form, he quietly recognized the massive purple serpent that had reached the moon. Anyone aware of its journey to the moon felt a little uneasy. Who here could actually get to the moon? From high up above, the Titan, with his unobstructed view, blurted out a single line. "That's a mighty figure of our Titan clan." Why would a giant say that? Yuziu had never mingled with that clan before. Maybe it was because that colossal purple serpent, once it exited the spatial gate, was so huge it blocked the light behind it, prompting the Titan to assume it must be one of their own. The one standing right at the gate could only see the strange scales of the purple serpent when they looked up, gasping and backing away to take it all in. Long who'd picked a far-off spot for himself, still ended up under the serpent's shadow. Sure enough, it was another beast from the misty mountain range. Suddenly, the ground rumbled as the giant moved his feet, sending everyone running in a panic. Someone cursed, "Damn, they really should have set a size limit." Thump, thump, he stomped his way to the nearby forest, then knelt before the purple serpent. In front of countless eyes, he declared, "Greetings, senior." Yuziu asked out loud, "You're my junior?" But in his mind, he was utterly baffled. A willow in a serpent shape. How did that even connect to a Titan? He'd never trained a disciple either. He'd been too busy bossing everyone around. The other guy lifted his head, all respectful. "I've only recently awakened my Titan bloodline. It's not pure, so the senior doesn't recognize it. But even if it were pure, Yuziu was dead sure the two had nothing to do with each other. He figured the Titan was just confused by his huge size. If he'd chosen a teeny-tiny snake, who'd make that mistake? But since he was the only Titan here, Yuziu got curious about who this might be. The fellow didn't reveal a name, just said he possessed the divine essence of a mountain god, not yet awakened, tied to the mountain range, wielding the power of hundreds of thousands of peaks, and supposedly immortal. Yuziu nodded to himself, thinking it was a neat ability. Awakening the divine mind was pretty decent, so he let the misunderstanding slide. Plus, nobody knew that this massive serpent was actually Yuziu, the organizer of the competition. He lowered his head and quietly told the Titan, "Right now, I'm holding the backside of this world and have allied with the divine tree. If you ever need anything, you can go see the divine tree. I'll be keeping an eye on the tournament, so do your best." The Titan's eyes lit up with excitement. He responded in a booming voice, "Understood." Who knew how the competition would turn out, but scoring a kinsman before it even started was a bright sign for the future, especially for a Titan who hadn't fully awakened yet, with no comrades of his own. This was a huge advantage. Yuziu silently called out to Qingzhao, "Transform the sight!" A small circle opened near the purple serpent and a figure appeared, giving a slight nod. The ground beneath the super beings began to shake violently. Something was welling up, and sand flew everywhere. Beasts roared, super beings shouted, "What now?" These were supposed to be top-tier fighters, yet every time the ground shook, they shrieked like they'd seen a mouse. You could tell who the real badass was by the calm way they held themselves. Clawbear let out a low snarl, cautious but fearless. This level of upheaval was nothing to it, or to the person riding on its back. Watching the soil pile up into mountains while the ground itself rose higher, he got the sense this was a shift in terrain, changing the location altogether. A huge swath of flat land took shape at an unbelievable speed. The stretch of land where the beasts had gathered was now laid out along the rim of a giant circle, marked off by white stakes. The forest below had vanished somewhere, replaced by an enormous arena, so big that if you tossed two mice into fight, you'd need a microscope just to see them. Long seeing this for the first time, was so shocked he could only exclaim, "It got bigger?" The place had completely transformed, leaving him too stunned to say much else. Then the purple serpent emerged again from the spatial rift, slithering above the contestants and declaring, "The appointed time has come. The first round of tournament officially begins now." Making its debut here as both host and judge, it naturally had to be a bit more ceremonious. This tournament is the first major event of the Misty Mountain. It brings together powerful contenders of many different races. The top 108 will all receive prizes, and the higher the rank, the richer the reward. Everyone stood at attention to listen, a number of them surprised that this news differed from the rumors in their own clans. The announcement got even juicier. The top 20 would earn the right to meet the divine tree, and the absolute champion would be awarded a light elemental fruit on the spot. To fire everyone up so they'd go all out, he pulled out the light fruit and let it shine in every direction. They stood there in a collective daze. For those who have only heard through word of mouth, this experience is truly different. Though it wasn't clear what effects it might have, definitely drove people to fight for it. Lightning Rat, upon seeing that dazzling brilliance, only got more determined. My underlings, wait for me to win that ball of light. If it really did win, then used it as a ball to kick around with its minions, Yuziu would probably pick them all up and spank their entire tribe. After letting everyone feast their eyes on the championship prize, Zelion began explaining the competition rules. The setup was simple. First, there would be a preliminary round, and from that, the top 1,000 would qualify for the next stage. Then, they'd pick 108 through head-to-head matches, until finally, the number one contender was revealed. As for the specifics of the elimination round, they had to call up the judge overseeing this stage. Bull Demon showed up in imposing fashion beside the purple serpent, assigned to handle the first round. It answered clearly, then stepped onto the field to announce, "The first test is straightforward. The first 1,000 who make it to me pass. I'll be right here waiting. Of course, there's a time limit." Then he pulled out a giant hourglass from who knows where the moment time was mentioned. That hourglass was impossible to miss from any angle, so nobody could complain. "I didn't see it," the bird clan whispered among themselves with gleeful grins. The first round clearly depended on speed, which tipped the advantage in their favor. It wasn't like the sky was packed with flyers after all. Most beasts moved on the ground. They only had to flap their wings and glide to the finish line. The horse clan's eyes glinted too. In any contest of speed, they certainly wouldn't admit defeat. But it wasn't just the birds or horses. The cheetahs felt the same, strolling a few steps while talking among themselves. When it comes to speed, we're at the top of the food chain. Among all these beasts, it was tough to say who was truly king or queen of the sprint, so the competition would be fierce. Longer, instead of bragging about being faster, folded his hands and prayed, "Grandpa, bless me," as though his grandfather's spirit would cross 1,000 miles to give him wings. That old man was still alive and well, so the kid was beseeching the wrong guy. Meanwhile, Wine Deity was sweating bullets. Tagging along with Big Bro 9, for some reason was a big brute still wearing a baby bib, now whining in Wine Deity's ear. "We're doomed. Bro, didn't you say we only had to fight? There's no way I can outrun all those guys." No one knew if dangling a basket of bamboo shoots out front might help, but Wine Deity himself saw it was bad news. All he could do was grumble. "Calm down." The Ant Clan, who believed raw power conquered everything, heard the rules and shrieked, "Cree, cree, cree." They were as aggressive as their leader, Flash. Meanwhile, those who fought solo, like the Thunder Bear or the Moon Fox from Greenmound, kept their own counsel. They were the quietest in the herd, since they had no one to rely on but themselves. Clawbear team didn't need to say a word to understand each other's goals. Their eyes were locked on the starting signal. Bull Demon's loud mouth opened wide. It roared, "The first round's assessment. Begin!" Nobody grumbled. All the beasts charged out at once, the ground shaking under their thunderous strides. The birds spread their wings, shooting in every direction with the sky wide open. Because the field was so crowded, plenty of beasts played rough, knocking out some of their rivals before they could reach the finish. The hippos, relying on their group size, ran with their rumps side by side, slamming their bulky bodies into any unfortunates in their way. "Don't block me! Out of the way! I'm taking first place." But right after they bashed into some creatures, the cheetahs vaulted straight over their backs. Those two moved nimbly, but they loved showing off by bounding right over others' heads. The furious hippos roared, "Get off me!" but the cheetahs paid no heed. Two horses galloped off at full speed, whinnying gleefully since there was nobody else running alongside them. "Look how we fly across the ground." They took an early lead, and their boasting drifted up to the eagles overhead. Those birds just jeered back, "Fly across the ground? You're not actually flying. Ha ha ha, you're all too slow." It was a lot cooler up there, making the race feel like a leisurely trip for them. Behind the winged ones and four-legged critters were the humans on 2 feet. Long Air and that big muscle guy wasted their breath cursing. Why are these beasts so freakishly fast? How can humans possibly keep up? Not just humans, there was also that bib-wearing panda, panting so heavily it had burned off all the calories. Seeing nobody around, it whining at the top of its lungs, "No way, I give up." Seeing the race getting intense, Yuziu shot a glance at second brother. Bull Demon, use your gravity field. That was precisely why he'd been chosen as judge for this round, his innate power over gravity. Otherwise, a pure speed race would be unfair to those on two legs, right? Bull Demon unleashed tenfold gravity right away. A familiar rushing sound filled the air as even the wind was pressed downward. The ground under him sank, forming the center, and the gravity radiated across the entire arena, causing the beasts to buckle. The heavy hippos were the first to get squashed. Some braced their legs, but the ground beneath them cracked into pieces. All they could do was open their mouths to roar. Bull Demon snorted and kept the skill going. The race had become a test of endurance. Whoever could drag themselves to him was clearly the real deal. Since the last upgrade, aside the change of appearance, Bull Demon's gravity ability has also significantly improved. Since that last time, Big Bro struggled in battle because the gravity field wasn't large enough. Now he only needs to stand at the center of the circle, and countless mutant beasts can't withstand the new force, 10 times stronger than before, collapsing onto the ground all at once. Not even in their wildest dreams could they have imagined that things would be this tough, and it's only the preliminaries. Wherever the purple light swept past, the mutant beasts were straining to resist. From the smallest, frailest creatures to the largest and strongest, each relied on their own body weight to fight back. But suddenly, their bodies felt unbearably heavy. Those who once prided themselves on speed now found themselves grimacing in agony, unable to even lift a foot forward. Frustrated by their own helplessness, many beasts started cursing at whoever was in front of them. "Hey, you up there! Don't block the way! Curse all you want, but do you think I want to be stuck here? If I could move, I'd be gone already." Instead of gritting their teeth and focusing on resisting the gravity, the air was soon filled with roars and growls mixed with a variety of cuss words. Damn it! Shit! These beasts sure had a lot to say. Unlike them, the super beings didn't waste their breath. Their bulging veins and tensed-up muscles showed they were pouring all their strength into resisting, but not a word came out. Bull Demon quickly realized that many mutant beasts simply couldn't withstand this gravity. But oddly enough, some humans were handling it better than expected. Take Long Mansion's little boy, for example. He was actually running forward. Of course, his two legs couldn't compare to those with more limbs, but Long Air was filled with confidence. This level of gravity can't stop me. Surely, this was thanks to his grandfather's blessings. Not too far away, the relative of Wine Deity was happily running on all fours. This was the perfect opportunity to surge ahead. After all, running with 4 legs had its perks. He was feeling pretty smug about securing a spot in the next round, until someone even faster sped past. A jet-black shadow streaked by in the blink of an eye, revealing sharp fangs and gleaming eyes. Even though there weren't that many contestants in the race, Shadow Tiger and his 2 lackeys still felt the need to knock that annoying panda out of the way. It was as if gravity didn't affect them at all. 4 strong legs stretched out with unwavering determination, guaranteeing them a place in the next round. The sight of those blazing tigers ignited the fighting spirit in the super beings. Even with trembling limbs, they forced themselves to stand up, taking small, deliberate steps forward. I can't lose either. Those mutant tigers can run that fast? And it wasn't just them. On the left, a massive gorilla moved like this was nothing new. Wait, wasn't that the guy from the construction team, the one who always carried bricks and cement? No wonder his body had grown so nimble and strong. Even he was using his forearms for momentum, sprinting ahead. But just as everyone was charging forward, the surroundings suddenly darkened. Was it the gravity distorting the light? Or had they been struggling here for so long that the day was slipping away? The super beings found it strange. Longer, too, noticed something odd. Still running, he tilted his head back to take a look. And right then, a massive mutant beast came charging from behind, forcing the humans to scatter in panic. Screams erupted. This damn tortoise is way too big. Encased in its white shell, the beast had used up half its strength just to make it this far. But just as it reached its limit, a massive foot slammed down beside it with a thunderous boom. What now? Looking up, they were met with the gigantic rear end of a titan, flexing every muscle in its body, pushing itself forward. The competition was quickly returning to its original intensity. The super beings adapted to the gravity at an astonishing pace and soon began accelerating. Yuziu cast his gaze downward at Bull Demon and casually remarked, "It seems this gravity isn't affecting most of them too much. Increase it." "Yes, sir," Bull Demon responded loudly. Still standing in the same position, he intensified the gravitational force, this time doubling it to 20 times normal gravity. The purple shimmer in the air, caused by the distorted atmosphere, rapidly shifted into a dazzling golden hue. Those mutant beasts who had barely managed to stand moments ago were instantly slammed back down, their heads smashed against the ground, pinned as if some unseen force was mercilessly pressing them down. 20 times gravity didn't just weigh down on their bodies, it unleashed a terrifying force. Those who failed to resist coughed up mouthfuls of blood, feeling as if their very organs were being squeezed, on the verge of bursting apart. Dark Tiger and its kin fared slightly better. They weren't coughing up blood, nor were they crushed into the floor, but their steps came to a cautious halt. Gravity increased tenfold. Who wouldn't feel that? Seeing how everyone had stiffened up, Yuziu finally nodded in satisfaction. Now this is getting interesting. The mutant beasts, spewing blood all over, started regretting their decision to participate. Wouldn't it have been much better to stay home, eat their fill, and sleep soundly than be here for a fruit they have never tasted in life? 20 times the gravity crushed their very willpower, making those who still struggled forward stand out even more. Take Thunder Polar Bear, for example. Its eyes narrowed with determination. Though it was moving much slower than before, at least it was still moving. Long-er, like the rest of the mutant beasts, had blood smeared all over his lips, but despite that, he was still running on his own 2 legs. Was this also thanks to his grandfather's blessings? His entire body felt unbearably uncomfortable. Even breathing was difficult, draining him of all energy. But the finish line was still far away. He could still push through. While some were burning with fighting spirit, the bib-wearing panda had switched to walking on 2 legs. Panting heavily, it muttered, "I'm exhausted. Should have never signed up for this. Everyone must be at the finish line by now." It was so drained that it couldn't even tell who was in front or behind, just stumbling forward blindly. With the golden glow of the 20-fold gravity field, those with exceptional speed quickly caught Yuziu's attention. One particular figure was flying in the sky, unable to escape the overwhelming gravity, but refusing to give up. Though its speed hadn't visibly decreased, it was clearly heavily injured, just like the others, spewing blood several times. Curious, Yuziu pulled up its status screen to check. The name was unique, Undying Blood Raven, Supernatural Rank 3. Inherent ability, Immortal Blood Path. Unlike ordinary creatures, the Undying Blood Raven was made up of countless blood particles. Each droplet was an independent entity, but could merge into a single powerful life form. The strongest fragment controlled its consciousness. When it perished, it would return to the main body, carrying all memories and experiences with it. To truly eliminate an Undying Blood Raven, one would have to destroy its very soul. Special abilities. Descent. If fatally wounded, its soul, energy, and memories would return to the strongest Blood Raven entity. Scream. Its piercing cry could shred human souls. Curse. Its blood-red eyes were cursed. Anyone who looked into them would fall under its spell. Yuziu couldn't help but marvel. This blood raven was truly fascinating, a creature formed from countless ravens that could split apart or merge together. When one fell, its essence was absorbed by the others, making the survivors even stronger. But it wasn't the only one that caught the boss's eye. Another contender stood out, a massive lava beast thundering forward. Despite its enormous size, meaning it bore even greater gravitational pressure, it still pushed ahead without hesitation. Shifting his gaze further, Yuziu was surprised to see waves of water rising in an unusual way. Sea beasts. Have they evolved to move on land now? His curiosity deepened. These creatures were manipulating water itself to advance forward. Meanwhile, the gorilla clan was still running despite the brutal gravity. Their daily training had clearly paid off. Shadow Tiger was starting to notice the growing gap between different mutant beasts. With a roar, it rallied its comrades. Everyone, keep chasing. The mighty thunder beasts weren't about to back down either. Their pride wouldn't allow them to fall behind. We're all beasts of Misty Mountain. We can't let them leave us in the dust. Pull them down! Someone shouted in frustration. If they were already using everything they had and still couldn't win, then they might as well drag their opponents down with them. Standing proudly atop his hourglass, which still had plenty of sand left, Qingjiao watched the gorilla clan with satisfaction. Not bad at all. As expected from the beasts I raised. They were doing so well, he figured they deserved a reward. I'll have to give them some extra sandbags to boost their training when they get back. Just then, another figure made Yuziu raise an eyebrow. Golden-spotted swordtail butterfly. It came too? That butterfly. One glance, and it was unforgettable. Yuziu suddenly recalled its inherent ability, light. This was a creature of light itself. A flicker of anticipation crossed his mind. Unless something unexpected happened, this radiant power would soon belong to one of them. As for who, Well, that was already becoming clear. Even Yuziu himself was eager to see the final outcome. Right at the most intense moment, a tiny purplish dot, like a striped mosquito, flew in, calling out, "Master!" It was Zelion, whom he hadn't seen in quite some time. He had long assigned it to patrol the outskirts of the void, searching for any interesting void-born creatures. Welcoming the mantis back, Yuziu was eager to hear if it had found anything new. Just as he expected, Zelion spoke with a grave tone. "I can sense it. A nameless yet powerful existence is approaching." Although Yuziu had been anticipating this moment, he hadn't expected it to actually happen. A formidable life form from beyond had truly emerged. His expression darkened. Finally, an unknown void creature had appeared nearby. Judging by Zelion's tense demeanor, there was no doubt it was no weakling. Yuziu thought for a moment. If it wasn't weak, then at the very least, it posed a threat. Void creatures were known for devouring and annihilating one another. Although Zelion was strong, compared to the horrors lurking in the depths of the universe, Yuziu feared it stood no chance. But then, the mantis suddenly spoke up with an unexpected request. "Master, I want to go ahead alone." Yuziu hadn't expected Zelion to volunteer to investigate on its own. Concerned that it might be acting recklessly, he asked, "Are you confident? The opponent must be really powerful." The mantis lifted its head and simply replied, "Yes." Its unwavering confidence even made Yuziu double down on his own trust. "Then go," he allowed. "Be careful." Granted permission, Zelion immediately unfurled its wings and shot out into the vastness of space. Its voice echoed faintly as it disappeared into the glittering cosmic expanse. Yuziu turned his gaze toward the universe once more. Even though there was no opponent on Earth capable of matching Zelion, if it encountered a creature in the void that directly countered its abilities, defeat was still a real possibility. The more he thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. Without hesitation, he coiled his massive purple serpent around himself, shifting direction toward the moon's surface, weaving his way toward the willow tree. After all, the tournament's judging and ranking were being handled by Qingzhao and Bull Demon. If he disappeared for a couple of hours, no one would notice. It was best to check things out in person. Fueled by both curiosity and worry, Yuziu let out a deafening roar and surged forward, racing to catch up with Zelion. Beyond Earth's atmosphere, space stretched infinitely, filled with shimmering white dots. It was breathtakingly beautiful, yet abyssally deep, like an endless ocean. And somewhere, far off in the distance, a jagged set of teeth, crooked, overlapping, desperately in need of braces, came into view. The beast's eyes glowed a menacing red. Yuziu had been right. He needed to see this with his own eyes. The fierce competition for the light fruit, an object whose purpose remains unknown to most, was still raging on. Bull Demon, standing firm with legs apart, clenched his fists and pressed down with gravity upon the contestants. The ground thundered with the sound of those being crushed under the force. Yet, the increased difficulty of the trial had given rise to formidable challengers. Among them was the Gorilla Group, pushing their way past the gravity boundary, a spectacular breakthrough. They roared through gritted teeth, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. The moment they escaped the crushing force, they collapsed onto the ground, panting like dogs in the summer, their tongues nearly lolling out. But despite their struggle, they had officially passed the qualifying round, a grueling but well-earned victory. Bull Demon stretched his arms wide in welcome. It's not surprised that your group is the first to arrive. And up there, atop the massive hourglass, stood Qingzhao. His ragtag team of bricklayers had somehow managed to set foot in the winner's zone first. Who would be next? A guttural growl echoed, an unmistakable roar of triumph from the Tiger Clan. They had just forced their way past the gravity boundary. The moment their front halves crossed over, their bodies felt lighter, but they were too focused on pushing forward to notice. They sprinted with everything they had. Following close behind were familiar faces, Thunder Polar Bear and his comrades, appearing as expected, accompanied by a deafening roar of celebration. Did anyone notice this was the third group from the Misty Mountains to overcome the gravity field? Had the test been leaked, or were the warriors from the mountains simply this powerful? A sudden gust of wind answered that question. A bird shot straight into the winner's zone. The strong make it through. No regional bias here. That marked the arrival of the feathered warriors. Soon after, the fifth contender arrived. Moonlight Fox from Green Mound, a protege of Ninetails sent to compete. It leaped past the gravity boundary without a single roar, exuding the same composed and steady presence as its mentor. Moving alone, it showed no hesitation. Then a shimmering butterfly fluttered through the final stretch of the gravity field. Using its innate ability, it conjured a sphere of light, channeling energy to propel itself forward, escaping the pull of gravity. However, while this technique kept it from being crushed against the ground, it severely lacked speed. It frantically flapped its wings, only to crash headfirst into a giant boulder. No, not a boulder, a colossal foot. It belonged to the giant who had just made it past the gravity field, standing tall beneath the sun. Even atop the enormous hourglass, Qingzhao barely reached this titan's knees. He looked up, sweating nervously. This is just ridiculous. His gaze followed the towering figure upward, but all he could see were slabs of muscle carved from stone. He craned his neck as far back as he could, yet still couldn't make out the giant's face. The strongest had already made it to shore. Behind them, a swarm of lesser creatures scrambled to claim the remaining spots. 108 contenders would advance, and only those who fought fiercely would earn their place. Longer clenched his jaw. The situation was looking grim. The contestants ahead of him were pulling farther and farther away, and his grandfather had yet to send down a blessing. Gritting his teeth, he knew he had to make a move. He couldn't keep waiting. Whatever technique he was about to unleash, he looked absolutely determined. At first, his steps remained heavy. Then, his pupils flashed. The moment of resonance had arrived. Something within him had awoken. With a sudden burst, he shot forward. His silhouette blurred as he crossed the area where gravity was 20 times stronger than normal. What kind of technique could allow a mere human to match the raw power of these mighty beasts? Among the latecomers, but still within the top 50, was someone looked like Qingzhao's brother. The only difference was that half of his body was embedded with metallic, his face concealed behind a mask. Beside him, a beast let out a low, victorious growl, celebrating its hard-earned passage. The sand in the hourglass was running low. Qingzhao kept a close watch on the contestants while ensuring he didn't neglect his duties. Gradually, more contenders emerged, top 70, then top 90. Most who made it this far no longer looked excited. Bull Demon glanced at the last grains of sand slipping through the hourglass. Time seemed to slow down at this point. He remained patient for a moment longer, and when the final grains fell, he opened his mouth and let out a thunderous roar, signaling the removal of the gravity field and the official tally of those advancing to the next round. Just beyond the gravity barrier, an orange-haired figure appeared. It wasn't over for him yet. As long as the boundary remained, there was still a chance. Long Air knew he couldn't let this opportunity slip away. His eyes gleamed as he pushed himself forward at full speed. The moment he broke into the normal gravity zone, his body, once weighed down by a force 20 times stronger than normal, suddenly became weightless. He lost control, crashed into the ground with a loud thud, and then ricocheted into the air due to the sheer momentum of his sprint. He was sent flying, tumbling far across the field before slamming straight into a group of beast competitors. A technical error, obviously. It wasn't like he meant to do that. Damn, that impact was loud, and his rear left a perfect imprint on someone's face. Dazed and dizzy, Longer couldn't see straight, but he knew he had made it. Instinctively, he threw his hands in the air in celebration. I did it. I actually made it to the finish line. He had no idea that two polar bears behind him were glaring with veins popping in frustration. They wanted nothing more than to take a bite out of him, but they had to let it slide. And then came an unexpected finalist, one of significant weight, literally. A pudgy, round-bellied panda, distantly related to wine deity, had somehow dragged itself to the finish line. Collapsed on the ground, gasping like it was on the verge of death, it mumbled, "I thought I would never make it to this line." Even after all that suffering, it had secured a spot among the victors. With the last grain of sand settling in the hourglass, Bull Demon let out a deafening roar. Time's up. The 20 times gravity field was lifted in an instant. The ones closest to him, the ones who had reached the finish line, were now confirmed as those who had conquered the trial. Looking around in satisfaction, he declared, "Those who have made it to the finish line, you are qualified. Those who have failed, leave now. Of course," he added, "or stay and watch the battle if you wish." A chorus of discontented cries rose among the defeated beasts. The arena buzzed with a mix of emotions: sorrow, frustration, and bitter resentment. Nearly 1,900 competitors had failed. Naturally, their voices of disappointment drowned out the cheers of the victors. One such loser was none other than that big-chested guy who had tried to pick a fight with Longer earlier. He now stood among the failures, seething with rage. That little brat actually made it? He succeeded, while I lost? Longer, finally regaining his senses, realized that he had passed the qualifying round. Overwhelmed, he wiped away tears that had unconsciously rolled down his cheeks. He was about to get emotional when Bull Demon's booming voice interrupted. "Now, let's begin the second round." "What? No rest?" His entire body was battered and bruised. His face was scraped raw. Was he really supposed to jump into another fight right now? Bull Demon, as if reading the minds of the exhausted contenders, reassured them. Don't worry, we have the essence of life. It will restore your stamina instantly. At this pace, the champion could be decided in just a week. Now, it was Qingzhao's time to shine with his earth control talents. He slammed his fist into the ground, and the earth trembled as an entire section of land was forcefully raised into view. Unlike before, when the ground had simply cracked apart, this time, a fully constructed battleground emerged. First, a sharp, towering stake rose from the ground. Then, as the dust settled, a vast stone arena came into view. The perfectly straight, square tiles stretched far into the distance, resembling an enormous chessboard. The battlefield was bordered by simple yet solid pillars. As the combat stage took shape, Bull Demon explained why they had been given essence of life. Because in the second round, you'll be fighting for real. Meanwhile, out in the vastness of space, Zelion was soaring through the galaxy at high speed, leaving behind a dazzling trail of green light. The mantis was headed toward a clear destination. The glowing streaks across its body made it stand out against the infinite darkness of the cosmos. Suddenly, a thunderous roar cut through the silence. A warning, loud and unmistakable. A monstrous creature covered in jagged spikes lunged out and blocked Zelion's path. The sheer presence of the beast was overwhelming. Its heavy footsteps pounded through the void as though stomping on solid ground. And in a way, it was. This creature had clearly claimed this patch of space as its territory. It looked just like a Tyrannosaurus Rex from Earth, except its skin had mutated, covered in grotesque, razor-sharp spikes. More importantly, it was standing on thin air, as if the vacuum of space was just another surface to tread upon. It had likely ruled this domain for a long time. Compared to the dinosaur, Zelion was barely the size of a mosquito. He wasn't even as big as one of the spikes on its body. The giant had to crane its neck down just to glare at him, its muscles tensing with the effort. But despite his small size, Zelion was far from weak. If anything, he was terrifying, a true menace. But there was no time to waste on theatrics. His mission couldn't be delayed. Without hesitation, he raised an arm and prepared to unleash his signature move, Azure Wind Slash. No hesitation, no mercy. The beast would have to be dealt with immediately. The dinosaur threw its jaws wide open and let out a deafening roar at Zelion. The sheer force of the sound wave sent his wings into a violent tremble. Maybe this beast had been lingering in the galaxy for too long, neglecting proper dental care, because that blast nearly knocked Zelion senseless. His head spun, his thoughts scattering like a tuft of cotton candy dissolving in water. Damn it! Desperate to hold on to his fraying consciousness, he tried to roar back, but his voice merely dispersed into nothingness. Just as the foul breath settled, 3 streaks of blinding light came slicing toward the dinosaur. It swiftly swung its massive right arm, the impact sending a dazzling burst of light across space. It hadn't used its claws to rip Zelion apart. No, it had realized that the little insect had vanished into another space the instant the attack landed. If size wasn't on his side, he had to secure an escape route first. But the dinosaur wasn't letting him slip away so easily. One savage swipe of its claw tore through the dimensional rift Zelion had just created, shattering it with an ear-splitting crack, like overheated glass breaking apart. Then, from the depths of that fractured void, the mantis suddenly lunged out, cloaked in a brilliant purple glow. Unbelievable! Zelion had slipped through a separate dimension and re-emerged, directly behind the dinosaur. With impossible speed, he twisted and weaved through the forest of jagged spikes, lining the beast's back. The sudden maneuver startled the massive creature, forcing it to snap its head around, eyes darting frantically in search of the insect. But Zelion had already found his target, a soft spot. With a deadly gleam in his eye, he launched his Azure Wind Slash straight toward it. The beast's eye went wide in agony. It had underestimated this tiny menace. Furious, it immediately lashed out, curling its massive hand in an attempt to snatch Zelion, just like a human catching a sluggish mosquito. Its razor-sharp claws came crashing down, but this time, Zelion was ready. Crossing both scythe-like arms in front of his chest, he murmured a silent incantation, gathering spiritual energy for his ultimate move, Void Azure Wind Slash. His eyes blazed with ferocity. He let out a piercing, ear-splitting screech, keek, 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 and then spread all 4 limbs wide. The unleashed energy erupted in a storm of slashes, crisscrossing, intertwining, layer upon layer of devastating cuts. A sharp sound echoed through space. When the dust settled, the dinosaur's once mighty claws were now nothing but shattered fragments, scattered in chunks both large and small. And there, Floating unshaken at the center of it all was Zelion, calm and composed, effortlessly maintaining his flight. The beast narrowed its eyes. After all these years of ruling the void, it had finally met an opponent that was truly difficult to deal with. And in this battle, only one would make it out alive. Using its small and elusive form to its advantage, Zelion weaved and zigzagged relentlessly, forcing the dinosaur's eyes to whirl around, trying to track its erratic movements. In the vastness of the universe, this beast had probably never encountered something as slippery as this blue mantis. One moment, it was flitting over its back. The next, it had circled around from the front to strike from behind. As soon as Zelion reached the back of the dinosaur's neck, it unleashed an azure wind slash, a clean, decisive cut, leaving no room for the beast to counter. The attack was disproportionately powerful for such a tiny creature. The dinosaur's jaws flew open in a silent scream, blood gushing out in a torrent. Its massive frame lurched forward, trembling violently as thick streams of crimson painted the void. Zelion had channeled even more force into this slash than usual, determined to bring the beast down. Striking the neck instead of softer flesh, it knew it had to apply overwhelming force. The cut was effective. Blood gushed out as if from a ruptured pipeline. The dinosaur's skin, despite its formidable appearance, wasn't invincible. But then, Zelion's sharp gaze caught something strange. The blood flow began to slower, and then, just as the mantis realized what was happening, the bleeding stopped altogether. The wound shrank rapidly. A gaping, flesh-ripped injury, just moments ago, had now reduced to nothing more than a pinprick-sized hole. A few final drops of blood seeped out before the skin sealed shut entirely. What the hell? Zelion hovered in midair, leaning in, squinting to make sure its eyes weren't deceiving it. Did that really just heal? Its blade attacks carried a bleeding effect, but this void beast had a regenerative ability that completely nullified it. If Zelion tried to pierce further into its body, there was a real risk of being absorbed instead. Even as the dinosaur's body healed itself, its cosmic-scale pride suffered a deep wound. It threw its head back and let out an earth-shattering roar, ignoring the blood seeping from between its razor-sharp teeth. How many creatures in this universe could even scratch its hide, let alone draw blood? Zelion had to think fast. If it could evolve both its scythe blades and its bloodletting effect while amplifying its offensive power, maybe, just maybe, it could overpower this beast's terrifying regeneration. At that thought, the azure windslash in Zelion's hands transformed. A column of spiritual energy flared up, wild, radiant, and divine. It was evolving on the spot, letting out an ear-splitting metallic screech. Keek, keek! Zelion reabsorbed the spiritual energy back into its body. A crisp, snapping sound followed as its exoskeleton began to shift. Spikes burst outward, standing tall, hissing as a green, slimy substance coated their surface. These hidden weapons had always been embedded beneath its shell, waiting for the perfect moment to spring forth like concealed daggers. Zelion's scythe arms changed color, darkening to a vivid green. They elongated, growing sharper, and now bore two jagged barbs on each side, razor-edged hooks designed to tear open anything in their path. The dinosaur's eyes widened in shock. It had the look of a beast witnessing the protagonist of a superhero show mid-transformation. And honestly, it was hard to blame it. The universe was vast, yet the number of creatures capable of spontaneous evolution like this was nearly non-existent. Zelion's jagged, fanged mouth stretched open, its joints cracking ominously, letting out a guttural, predatory noise. It looked as though it was about to take a vicious bite. This was its second combat form, Predator Mode. Its appearance alone was enough to strike fear into anything that dared face it. It had shed all defensive instincts. This form was built purely for attack. Without hesitation, Zelion shot forward, launching a direct, head-on assault against the dinosaur. It didn't care about the spikes or the monstrous defenses. It tore straight toward the beast's soft underbelly. The dinosaur's wide, horrified eyes betrayed its fear. It had hesitated for a second. And in that moment, Zelion's glowing green streak slashed clean across its exposed chest. Blood sprayed violently in the air as the dinosaur let out a bone-rattling shriek. It couldn't keep up with this speed. It roared in pain, but Zelion wasn't done. Its movements became even faster, changing angles unpredictably. The battlefield was now filled with streaks of flashing green light. The beast twisted and turned, trying to protect its vital spots, hunching its back to shield its underbelly. But it was too late. Zelion had already turned this fight into a relentless slaughter. In no time, the beast's body was covered in wounds, both deep and shallow, each one oozing dark crimson. The thick blood soaked its dark hide, drenching its massive form. The sound of slicing wind filled the void. Zelion's strikes came faster and faster, forcing the dinosaur into an entirely defensive position. But it wasn't over yet. It launched an all-out attack. Dozens of green energy blades rained down, hammering into the beast, cutting through its flesh with brutal precision. The blood sprayed like a violent storm, splattering through the air in streaks of red. Was this really the work of a single mantis? The dinosaur, one of the rulers of the void, refused to be humiliated like this. It clenched its jaw, its fangs grinding audibly. Its endurance had limits, and Zelion was testing them. A furious, earth-shaking roar tore from its throat. Then, without warning, it opened its mouth and fired a blinding white energy beam, a devastating blast, its center burning with pure white light, edged with a faint, ominous purple glow. Though strong and fast, it lacked flexibility, which only highlighted Zelion's advantage even more. Twisting its body around the beam of light to dodge, no matter if it swept right or left, its circling movements made it hard to hit. The dinosaur was a clever one. It quickly realized the situation. If it didn't take down its opponent soon, this mantis would keep tormenting it endlessly. And so, blinding columns of light shot out in a straight row from the dinosaur's position, illuminating the entire area. The power of this LED barrage was terrifying. The very galaxy it struck showed signs of collapsing, and a deafening rumble echoed violently through space. It burned through a huge amount of spiritual energy just for a random strike that could actually hit the target. As long as it could land a single hit on Zelion, that would be enough. Who would have thought that the mantis had mastered the art of dodging to perfection? If it felt like it, it zigzagged through the air. If not, it traced a five-pointed star, leaving behind streaks of blue light as it evaded the entire onslaught, only to come back and land a clean, precise slash on its opponent. How could the dinosaur possibly block that? The massive beast toppled over with a heavy crash, coughing up blood uncontrollably. Its body was covered in deep slashes, yet that alone wasn't enough to bring down a foe from the galaxy. Its eyes flashed with fury as it pushed itself back up, firing off two smaller energy beams, less powerful than before, but significantly faster. Surely it couldn't keep missing that tiny creature forever? Surprisingly, this time, the dinosaur's beam hit its mark. Zelion, the mantis, took the full force of the attack head-on. The surge of energy split into 3 shockwaves, each shaking the battlefield with a deafening roar. As soon as the light faded, the dinosaur's massive claw shot up. It was convinced that the battle form the mantis had just shown off was built purely for offense, meaning it had no real defense. There was no way it could still fly after that last attack. With absolute confidence, the dinosaur's claw came crashing down directly onto Zelion. A thunderous impact rang out, only for a streak of light to shoot up in the next instant, slicing clean through the beast's arm like it was nothing. Blood spurted in fountains, illuminating Zelion within the glow of its own energy. Its stance was as intimidating as ever, completely unscathed. A lean, streamlined body optimized for speed and devastation, yet the most striking thing was the unwavering, fearless aura it radiated. With its right claw raised high, it slashed outward, sending waves of energy cascading around itself. The beast, seeing this, hurriedly formed a massive energy sphere. It knew full well, if it didn't block this attack, it would be reduced to dust on the spot. A torrent of violet energy shot out, colliding with Zelion's striking blue force. The mantis used the surrounding space to gather momentum for its azure wind slash, slicing downward while cloaking itself in its own power. Then, like an unstoppable force, it surged forward, cleaving straight through the violet energy blast. The dinosaur's vision was suddenly overwhelmed by Zelion's sheer power. In that fleeting moment, realization struck. It had no way to counter this. A single, decisive slash cut straight through its torso. A sky-shaking roar was abruptly silenced. 2 halves of the dinosaur's body were sent flying, crashing into the surroundings with bone-shattering force, the sound of breaking and splintering echoing far and wide. Through the swirling dust and smoke, only a gaping maw could be seen. That was it. It had to be dead now, right? Placing one slender foot atop the fallen beast's head, Zelion landed lightly, exhaling in relief. Finally, it was over, or so its naive thought. Just as it was about to take a step forward, the dinosaur's eyes snapped open, wide and unblinking like a ghostly specter. Zelion, just as quick-eyed, saw it at the same time. Their gazes locked, sending a jolt of shock through its body. No way, it had already been sliced in half. Yet behind its severed upper torso, a shocking sight unfolded. A glowing tail sprouted from its body, still lined with jagged spikes. Though the 2 halves of its skin had fused back together, there was no flesh in between. Even so, the dinosaur's movements remained disturbingly fast. With terrifying speed, it swung its tail straight at Zelion. Too fast. The mantis instinctively curled its body to dodge, but there wasn't enough time. A strike this dangerous, there was no way to prepare. It wouldn't be able to evade in time. The tail came crashing down. A massive boom erupted. Zelion barely had time to shout no before its voice was cut off. Wait, how was it still alive? It felt nothing. It was as if the tail strike had never landed. What just happened? Looking ahead into the darkness, it suddenly saw something, a serpent emerging from the roots of Yuziu, sinking its fangs deep into the dinosaur's throat. The beast thrashed, but the serpent coiled around it with relentless force, strangling it until it could no longer struggle. Zelion's eyes widened in shock. It hesitated for just a moment before calling out, in a half-disbelieving whisper, Master? The root snake of Yuziu tightened its grip on the spiked dinosaur, making it let out a long, piercing scream. Even Zelion was taken aback by his sudden appearance to save him. Instinctively, she called out, Master! But then he fell silent. Yuziu took full advantage of his clear size difference to subdue the beast, leaving it unable to even struggle. He quickly examined this creature that had dared to nearly kill his subordinate. It turned out to be a supernatural rank 4 beast with a short, simple name, Armor. Its inherent ability was hunger, rooted in an insatiable appetite. It could devour everything to grow stronger. It had a special ability called bone spikes, which transformed excess material into sharp bone spikes and expelled them from its body. Another ability, Banquet, allowed it to expand its mouth and create a suction force to swallow everything in its path. Its roar carried a sound that could pierce through the very soul. Additionally, it possessed Earth Stomp, a body so massive it defied common understanding. No wonder it was so terrifying in the vastness of space. Its natural defenses included an incredibly tough hide, as hard as diamond, making it difficult for even Zelion's sharp blades to penetrate. But the final detail was the most fearsome of all, extreme regeneration, a healing ability that became even more monstrous the more it devoured. Just reading a few lines about it was enough to drive Armor into a frenzy. It opened its massive jaws and bit down on Yuziu, but as soon as it did, a brilliant white light flashed. In an instant, Armor's entire body was enveloped in Yuziu's spiritual energy. Yuziu had no reason to hold back. He bit back, draining both Armor's energy and his own spiritual power at the same time. The surrounding space rippled violently as energy was abruptly siphoned away. This bastard is absorbing my energy. Still maintaining his stance, Yuziu hadn't expected this creature's inherent ability to be so insidious. It didn't manifest openly, but instead worked in such a sinister way. This proved that the hunger ability described by the system was even more terrifying than he had thought. It would do anything to satisfy its bottomless hunger. The system flickered, revealing new information. Armor wasn't just any Voidborn creature. It was the 17th king, Hunger. It seemed that every king of the Voidborn race possessed an extraordinary ability that far surpassed normal beasts. Yuziu had to admit that Armor's ability was remarkable, but being bitten like this infuriated him. Don't even think about stealing anything from me. He rapidly coiled his snake-like roots beneath him. A loud whooshing sound echoed through space as they compressed, turning into spring-like restraints that tightly trapped Armor. A surge of spiritual energy erupted. This was not just a counter-absorption, but a full-blown energy theft, combining both nutrient absorption and spiritual power plundering. Armor howled, struggling fiercely, trying to resist with its own spiritual energy. A faint blue flame flickered around its body. But strangely, even after minutes passed, its energy remained unchanged. Though it continued to wail and scream, its skin remained taut, its blood still flowing. Nothing seemed different. So, this thing just likes to scream? Even Yuziu found it strange. By now, with all the energy being drained, it should have shriveled up into a husk already. Suddenly, a new system notification popped up. Absorption has reached its limit. You have absorbed the hunger ability of the Voidborn Titan. Your power has increased further, allowing you to perfectly absorb all energy. Impressive. No wonder his abilities hadn't worked. It turned out this monster had already evolved past their effects. This is beyond my expectations. Looking at Armor's jagged fangs, Yuziu clicked his tongue. A Voidborn Titan, truly formidable, beyond my predictions. But powerful beasts like these always excited him, the boss of a multi-species enterprise, even if their attitude was a bit arrogant. What a pity that it had encountered him and Zelion. Killing it outright would be a waste. He started weighing his options. This Voidborn beast was the perfect living weapon, not just for combat, but an invaluable asset for exploring other planets. If he ever invaded a world, its mere arrival could bring devastation. Just imagine, a beast that could unleash a few beams of spiritual energy and incinerate an entire world, absorbing all incoming attacks to make itself even stronger. Other creatures had to struggle and train to improve. This thing could evolve infinitely just by devouring. And this was only the 17th Voidborn king, who knew what kind of monsters ranked even higher. Yuziu had unknowingly put himself in a difficult situation. For now, he could only restrain armor instead of killing it, but with its rate of evolution, he doubted he could keep up for long. There was only one option left. Yuziu shoved the bloodied, tattered creature into a spatial gate. For now, he could only suppress its growth, sealing it away inside one of the 9 great spaces, the void. Once everything was settled, Zelion finally spoke up. It was only ranked 17th, and it was already this troublesome. Just how powerful are the higher-ranked Voidborns? He didn't question why his master had spared their deadly opponent, which pleased Yuziu greatly. But when he turned to look at the mantis, well, surprise! Zelion had awakened a new ability. He now looked like a vibrant, deadly jester, armed with lethal weapons. Yuziu's curiosity was piqued. His new ability was blood drinking. His scythe-like arms could absorb blood, even spiritual energy. Not only could he replenish his stamina, but he could accelerate his own growth. Creatures with abilities linked to the void truly never ceased to amaze. For now, Yuziu decided to take Zelion with him. He had already wasted enough time here. He still had an important role to play, judging a grand tournament back on Earth. The dark expanse of space quickly faded, replaced by blue skies and golden sunlight. But the situation down there wasn't as pleasant as the weather. A massive surge of spiritual energy, infused with both ice and fire, erupted on Arena Number 1. From within it, a set of powerful claws emerged, stomping onto the ground with such force that the entire surface cracked open. After thoroughly pummeling its opponent into motionlessness, the ice bear returned to its normal form and stepped back, leaving behind a defeated beast sprawled across the shattered floor. Dust and smoke lingered for a few moments, but there was no sign of movement from the fallen creature. Its outer skin glowed like metal freshly scorched by fire. The white rhino's eyes had turned lifelessly pale. Was it possible that it had perished from just a tournament match? With that alone, the ice bear had won an overwhelming victory. It let out a triumphant roar, while a referee raised the flag and declared, "Thunderous giant bear wins." One might wonder why a human was acting as the referee in this place. Turns out, he was a superhuman from Yan City, invited here recently to ensure neutrality between the competing beasts. With his serious and reliable demeanor, he carried a heavy responsibility. Meanwhile, over at Arena Number 2, fierce battles raged on, as most matches were happening simultaneously. In the distance, a lone human figure stood amidst the chaos of mighty clashes that crashed down like mountains. A strange beast, part rodent, part fox, with elongated legs, was launching rapid strikes with an appendage resembling a tail, except that it sprouted from its back. The massive limb slammed into the ground with deafening force, tearing up the earth and forcing the human to dodge. Fortunately, Long-Er was both fast and enduring. Evading such attacks was no challenge for him. His hands, reinforced by spiritual energy, had transformed into claws tipped with razor-sharp talons. With agile footwork, he surged forward, rapidly closing the distance between himself and his opponent. When he was close enough, he slashed fiercely, dragon-scale claw. 3 deep gashes ripped through the beast's torso, spraying blood in all directions. The creature let out a ferocious roar before collapsing onto the arena floor with a heavy crash. Blood pooled around its body. It could no longer get up. The referee raised his flag again. Long victory. This wasn't Long-Er's first match. By now, his body was covered in scratches from having fought nearly a dozen elimination battles against others who had survived the gravity round. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he thought, "The opponents are getting stronger, but at least I've made it to the top 108. All around, the divided sections of the battlefield echoed with the sounds of combat as spectators gathered to observe the fights. Glancing up at the high-ranking scoreboard, Long-Er felt a tinge of disappointment. He was only ranked 82nd, not exactly a position with much competitive advantage. Above him was a name, Cloud Dragon Dove, but he couldn't tell whether it was a human or a beast. From rank 83 downward, it was entirely beasts, filled the list. Long-Er's eyes then wandered toward the fighters who had already finished their battles and were waiting for the next round. Even a 3-eyed human clan member was only within the top 50. The difference between ranks 100 and 50 might as well be the size of a planet, Long-Er thought. Despite staying calm throughout the tournament, he still couldn't help but wonder, would the light fruit fall into my hands? High above, on a hideous-looking observation platform built by Qingzhou for the high-ranking VIPs, someone else had their eyes fixed on Long Er. Ninetails had been watching him fight from the beginning. This human is quite something, she mused. Though his rank was low, he had yet to reveal his full strength. There was a power within him that did not belong to him. Ninetails was certain of it. And so, she eagerly anticipated the upcoming rounds when he would be forced to unleash his true abilities. Beside her, Bull Demon had already picked up on what she was thinking. We're down to 108 competitors. The ranking will be determined by accumulated points. If he wants to climb higher, he'll have to go all out. We'll soon see what he's been hiding, Bull Demon remarked. Meanwhile, Black Dragon stared silently at Long Er, like many others. It wasn't often that a human earned the respect of the beasts in its clan. But after watching for a while, Black Dragon suddenly sensed something unusual. A faint aura of spiritual energy had begun to envelop Long Er's body. Is this the mysterious power the others were talking about? Elsewhere, another beast collapsed onto the battlefield with a thunderous roar, celebrating its own victory. It was Iron Steel Titan Lizard, which had just been declared the winner. Its victory pushed it up to rank 72. Rank 77 had just been knocked off the leaderboard. It was Fire Scale Serpent. The lower ranks included Ling Dang Lone Goose, Leaping Red Carp, and Corspy Turtle, all of whom were at risk of being eliminated if they encountered stronger opponents. The next match was announced. Next battle, Shadow Tiger. It had been waiting for this moment. The instant it stepped forward, it let out a mighty roar filled with raw power. But its opponent was no pushover. It was a Titan. There was no way a Titan should be ranked 100, which made Qingzhao's thick lips part in shock. Already, fighters from the top 10 are clashing against each other? Of course, it was still too early to determine who would claim the light fruit. Bull Demon offered a simple explanation. Both of them have 24 wins and 1 loss, so they're facing off to compare points. Makes sense. Long Er, having just finished his match, turned to watch the excitement unfolding in Arena Number 9. A showdown between a Titan and Shadow Tiger, 2 powerful contenders worth keeping an eye on. Seeing their sheer intensity, he felt somewhat relieved about his own rank of 82. At least, I don't have to fight one of them. After all, going up against rank 7 or 8 was impossible for him right now. He figured his next opponent would be someone closer to his level, or so he hoped. Just as he was thinking this, a massive foot slammed down near him. Startled, Long Er looked up warily. It's Moonfox. It exuded a terrifying presence, a silent, overwhelming pressure that could only belong to rank 1. Nearby, Thunder Panda casually munched on a bag of chips, lazily agreeing with Wine Deity, who was frowning as he commented, "Oh boy, that human is about to get wrecked." Ninetails smirked. Now things are getting interesting. A rank 82 human going up against rank 1, it was the perfect opportunity to force him to reveal his hidden power. Although many battles were happening at the same time, the fights of the top-ranked warriors always drew a massive raven. No one knew if anyone had bet on Titan, but the brute was going berserk, raising his flaming arm and roaring wildly before smashing it down where Shadow Tiger stood. As expected, Titan was a combat type that relied on his massive body. His arm, evolved from earth and mountains, carried an unimaginable weight. Any tiger caught under that strike would surely be reduced to a mere paper tiger. But Shadow Tiger wasn't just some domesticated feline. It growled from below before leaping into the air, leaving behind a sharp streak of purple light interwoven with gray. A loud boom echoed as the tiger's attack split the arm apart. Titan's massive forearm crashed into the arena floor, causing the ground to crack open, with jagged chunks jutting up in all directions. Seizing the moment as Titan struggled to lift his arm and let out a furious roar, Shadow Tiger leaped again. Its speed was astonishing. Just a single push sent it soaring up to the giant's chest. While Titan flung globs of his golden, blood-like substance everywhere, Shadow Tiger swiftly unleashed its clone technique. In an instant, there were now 2 identical purple-black tigers, exuding an overwhelming aura of darkness that suffocated their foe. A sphere of spiritual energy formed between the long, sharp fangs, gleaming in radiant hues that scattered light in all directions. Titan saw the 2 tigers coming straight for him, but just because he saw them didn't mean he could react in time. The tiger's energy beam shot forward like a hurricane, slamming Titan right in the face. The massive giant staggered, looking as if a freshly sprouted tree had been struck by a violent tornado. His thick legs failed to hold him up, and he toppled backward with a thunderous crash, sending shockwaves over 10 meters high. His immense size didn't necessarily mean he had equal strength. Titan lay on his back, half of his face shattered into dust and rubble, exposing a molten-like core within. The glow from inside was mesmerizingly beautiful, but utterly useless at this moment. As he opened his mouth, unsure of his next move, Shadow Tiger's pitch-black paw stomped down on his massive chest. Snarling, the tiger shoved its mouth, now brimming with spiritual energy, right in Titan's face and roared, "Give up already, or I'll blast you and your core to bits." Dear heavens, this Shadow Tiger was as fierce as a demon. There was no negotiating with it. Titan squinted one eye, and with a sigh of resignation, uttered 2 words, "I surrender." That made it 24 wins and 1 loss. The closely matched battle showcased the true strength of these fighters. From the stands, Bull Demon clicked his tongue. Shadow Tiger wins again. With 25 wins, it had officially joined the ranks of the top-tier warriors in the server. Nearby, another arena shimmered in dazzling lights, reflecting the delicate wings of a butterfly. It was hard to believe that such devastating energy came from something as fragile as a butterfly, yet it was currently blasting away at a chubby panda. Just moments ago, the panda had been munching on snacks and chatting with Wine Deity. Now it was fleeing in a panic, unsure how to counter the overwhelming energy. Oh no, which move should I use now? The price of such hesitation was immediate. A barrage of light beams sliced through the whirlwind, it piercing straight into the panda. Blood spattered in all directions as the wind howled, mixing with the panda's agonized screams. My God, one move, and that gluttonous lump is down. The panda lay sprawled on the floor, eyes spinning in confusion, as the referee raised a flag and declared, "Golden-spotted swordtail butterfly wins, ranked number 2. The moment those words were spoken, a loud wail erupted from the stands. Crap, it was Bro 9, staring daggers from the audience. Flash, watching from the side, scoffed coldly. On the surface, it looked indifferent, but there was a smug smirk playing on its lips. Ha! As if the butterfly should even be ranked 2nd. In the end, it's just because the Panda Clan's juniors are too weak, unlike my subordinates. No sooner had those words left its mouth than karma struck it square in the face. On a nearby battlefield, a battered red ant underling was being ridden by a pinky Pikachu. The referee's voice rang out loud and clear. Lightning Rat wins, ranked 33rd. Flash let out a loud, "Ha!" And from that moment on, it dared not boast again. Thorn was about to encourage her little 5, but all the ant needed was just a moment alone. At this moment, Flash wasn't the only one suffering psychological trauma. Wine Deity immediately grabbed his beloved phone and called his big bro to complain. But the moment the call connected, Poe was already laughing, "Ha!" on the other end. "Hey, didn't we already win? When will you send over the 1,000 bamboo shoots you owe me?" Brother 9 decisively hung up, but not before mimicking the operator's voice. "The number you have dialed has been blocked. Please refrain from calling again." Meanwhile, the Lightning Rat's battle arena was in an uproar. A whole army of rats waved their flags excitedly, chanting in unison, "Boss, boss," to celebrate their victory. Just then, a deafening explosion rang out, blasting Lightning Rat right off the ant's head it had been standing on. The blue light from the blast stole its spotlight completely, making its forehead veins bulge in frustration. Glaring at the source of the explosion, it shrieked, "What the hell? Don't you see rank 33 celebrating over here?" But mid-rant, it suddenly fell silent. The commotion over there was simply too big. Almost all neutral gazes had shifted toward that direction. A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. "Look over there! Check out arena number 7. All the members of Misty Grand Mountain turned their heads in that direction, with Black Dragon being the most tense among them. Others had been vaguely expecting something dramatic, but he had been quietly waiting for this moment. A sharp scraping sound echoed under the shoes of a young boy, his abrupt stop kicking up dust on the battlefield. It was none other than the Long family's young master. He stood there, shrouded in the lingering haze of battle, his face lowered in an eerie stillness. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes locked onto his opponent with a deadly serious expression. Across from him, White Fox stared back with icy, unblinking eyes, its breath still exhaling traces of spiritual energy mixed with white flames. Its aura was just as heavy as the humans, for as a beast with awakened abilities, it could sense the strange power lurking within Longer. That made it extra cautious. Ninetails watched with satisfaction, quietly assessing. White Fox, the White Fox King of the Green Mound Fox tribe, had long become powerful thanks to the spiritual herbs gifted by its master. It had already reached the threshold of rank 4, yet for some unknown reason, it kept suppressing itself, refusing to break through. In truth, Ninetails had been using matches like these to understand the reason behind White Fox's restraint. It hadn't climbed to the top of the rankings so effortlessly in the double battle tournament for nothing. But Nine Tails believed it could be even stronger. Black Fox wasn't sitting in the stands with the others, discussing the fight. Instead, it had perched itself silently on a distant tree branch, watching the battle unfold from afar, its gaze fixed intently on White Fox ever since it entered the race for the light sphere. No one knew what Black Fox was thinking, but a hint of worry flickered in its eyes. Little sister. White Fox's stance in front of Longer looked exactly like those ancient tales of demons bullying helpless humans. Black Fox frowned, thinking, "This isn't right. This is no different from an adult beating up a kid." White Fox knew it too. It disliked fighting battles where the power gap was too large, so it shouted in frustration, "Surrender, human! You can't win!" Facing White Fox head-on, Longy knew this wasn't just any opponent. But still, to surrender just like that wasn't his style. "Do I really have to use that power?" A voice seemed to whisper the answer from deep within, the very power that gave his family their surname, Long. "Dragon, let's go all out!" There was no point in hiding it anymore. He gave a slight nod and whispered, "Got it." A spark of fire flickered in his eyes. Longer had made up his mind to go all in. Gritting his teeth, he muttered, "To be honest, I really didn't want to use this ability. But you just said I'd lose, didn't you?" A surge of power erupted from his body, wrapping around him like flames, the red-tipped strands of his hair igniting with an intense glow. "No way am I giving up. I didn't come here just to surrender." The sudden wave of spiritual energy surged toward White Fox, catching it off guard. The human standing before it was completely different from before. No longer was he cautious and reserved. Instead, he was like a shaken soda bottle bursting open, fizzing uncontrollably. Longer let out a bold laugh. "Not so sure about that now, are you?" White Fox's eyes widened in shock. It always knew this kid was strange, but now it truly couldn't understand why. Up in the distance, Black Dragon suddenly let out an exclamation. "Now I get it! That familiar aura on him. It's from there. That kid's power. It's borrowed from someone I know." But at this point, who cared about keeping secrets? "It's him." He swallowed the dragon egg. A surge of overwhelming spiritual energy erupted, forcing Longer to brace himself. His mouth opened wide, letting out a long, guttural roar as if his entire body was transforming. At that exact moment, space itself cracked and split apart, revealing a massive gateway. Yuziu burst out from the cosmic void, hurriedly carrying his true form, a mutated willow tree. His immense spiritual energy sent shockwaves through the entire arena, leaving every single spectator gasping in astonishment. "It's the Divine Tree! The Divine Tree has appeared!" Yuziu should have taken the form of his root serpent body, like earlier, to avoid drawing too much attention. But in his rush, he had completely forgotten. Now, his gaze locked onto the massive pillar of spiritual energy erupting from Arena number 7, just as engrossed as the contestants and spectators. The three-eyed man furrowed his brow but secretly let out a breath of relief. It had thought this would be the last chance to witness this phenomenon. But strangely, it wasn't referring to Yuziu. It was looking at the one unleashing this bizarre power. Even the Divine Tree himself widened his eyes in disbelief. Am I too late? It was already happening. The form taking shape around Longer, forged purely from raging spiritual energy, was unmistakable. It was a dragon with its wings fully unfurled. One final roar, and the transformation would be complete. A human body was never meant to contain or harness such a terrifying power. Even Longer himself was struggling, his mouth stretching open as he let out a hoarse, unrelenting howl, his entire form trembling as he forced the energy outward. Across from him, White Fox planted its paws firmly on the ground, eyes never leaving the impending storm of destruction. The waves of energy pouring from Longer were relentless, and it could sense the danger drawing ever closer. From a distance, Yuziu already knew why he had felt something strange all the way from the void. This was no ordinary power. This human is quite interesting. He had Dragon Clan blood running through his veins. But how? Not just Yuziu. Every single being of power present was wondering the same thing. His spiritual energy was still surging, rapidly approaching the peak of rank 3, and he showed no sign of stopping. White Fox itself was already on the verge of rank 4, but had yet to fully step into it. If Longer's energy surpassed the peak of rank 3, the battle's outcome would be impossible to predict. But White Fox had made up its mind. No matter what, I will not lose. Yet, when Longer's amber eyes suddenly flared open, White Fox was caught off guard. Its own eyes widened in shock. Before it could even process what was happening, Longer had appeared less than 2 meters away, right in front of its nose. His left arm had transformed. A massive dragon claw, the size of a fully grown dragon's limb, had replaced his forearm. The rest of his body remained unchanged, but that single transformation was enough to alter the battlefield completely. Longer lunged forward, his full weight crashing down on White Fox with an earth-shattering explosion. Boom! A deafening blast tore through the arena. The sheer force of the impact roared like an inferno, engulfing the battlefield in flames. No one could see what was happening within the raging firestorm.